Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's P&G Alumni Network Enrichment Series webinars. This is your host, Ileana Rojas, and I hope you're all safe and well. And I'm here together with Dean Butler, who will share his thoughts and expertise on how to navigate severe disruption and turn crisis to an advantage. Dean is the founder of LensCrafters, and he has a constant drive to challenge the status quo, which has led him to revolutionize the optics industry. Dean, are you there?
Well, everybody, welcome. I look forward to this. In my post P&G career, I've been primarily in the optical retail industry, selling eyeglasses. I personally had, it's scary to think about. I personally had 2,200 optical stores in 29 different nations. And I've been on boards of directors of other optical companies and so forth, and I had a lot of fun in the industry. But boy, is it an interesting industry. The optical industry operates like a trade union. The optometrists do everything they can do to protect their turf, maximize their income, reduce competition. And boy, has that created some interesting scenarios during my career. And I'm going to talk about some of those so you can see how we solve problems that at first seem rather unsolvable. Now, I want you to see a video first of an airplane, stunt plane pilot, solving a problem you won't believe he solved. But he solved it. He saved his neck. The wing came off his plane. He landed it safely with one wing. Wait, you won't believe this. Watch this.
Where's his right wing? He's just lost his wing. Oh my God! Oh no! No! Mate! Damn.
Okay, well, the first question most people ask me is, how did the guy do that? He didn't practice it, I'll tell you that. He never thought it would happen, but I have a friend who is a stunt pilot, and he's watched that several times, and he said the guy obviously kept his wits about him, and he had it's a very small, very powerful airplane for its size, and he put the thing to full throttle, absolutely full throttle, and went to what they call reverse rudder to steer the plane in the opposite direction it tried to spin when the wing came off. And somehow he got the thing on the ground. And we do some of these kind of things in the business world from time to time. And I'll tell you about some of the ones that I faced in optics. When I started LensCrafters, only 7% of the industry in the United States was what they, in those days, called commercial. All of it, otherwise, 93% was traditional private practitioners. And boy, they didn't like what we were doing. Glasses in about an hour, most of you will realize, is what we did. When glasses usually took 2 hours and 2 trips and all that sort of thing. Anyway, boy, did they attack us. The biggest attack we had in the early days was from Pearl Vision Centers, which was the only chain of any size. Pearl and Texas State Optical in those days were the same company, and they were most of the commercial segment of the market. Well, we were advertising glasses in about an hour, and whereas a Pearl would sell 4 to 6 pair of glasses a day, we were selling 22 to 25 a day. And on Saturdays, we do 100. And boy, they didn't know what to do about that. So they started advertising that Pearl does glasses in an hour. Well, if you read what they wrote carefully, they didn't lie, but they didn't tell the truth. It was very misleading because they could do about 20% in an hour, and we could do 98, 97, 98% in an hour. So now here's another guy advertising glasses in an hour. And of course, my reaction at that time was, oh my goodness, here we've started something brand new, and these guys are going to ruin it because they're the known entity, the known name. Nobody knew who LensCrafters was in those days. What are we going to do? So the one thing I decided not to do was to call the lawyers, because you never win that. And you'd have a different lawsuit in each state because the regulations are different in each state. So what we did, I thought was pretty clever, and boy, did it work. We started advertising glasses in about an hour, or they're free. And people were going into Pearl in droves and getting upset because they didn't get their glasses in an hour and demanding them for free because they thought it was Pearl that was doing that advertising. That one worked, and Pearl backed off of that. Within a couple of weeks, they completely backed off of it. But we saved our necks by not calling in the lawyers and saying, how can I go get these guys? What can I do about it? Later on, I was on the board of directors of 1-800-CONTACTS. I was 11 years on that board. And you know, 1-800-CONTACTS is about 30-35% of contact lens sales in the United States. And that was another business where the optometry community just absolutely loathed it. And the regulations in almost all states are that you cannot sell what they call optical appliances, contact lenses or glasses, without a prescription. So what was happening in those days was the Federal Trade Commission had said that when you get a prescription that the optometrist has to give you a copy of it, but there was less than 40% compliance. They just didn't do it. And there was one state in particular had an absolutely militant optometric association, the COA, the California Optometric Association. And they sued us because they said that we're filling prescriptions. We're filling prescriptions without seeing the prescription. We're selling contact lenses without seeing or verifying the prescription. So we thought, well, what do you do about this? So we thought, well, what's a prescription? Very few people would ask that question. Yeah, a prescription is a piece of paper that the doctor signed, right? No. We thought that it was better to get the prescription off the package of contact lenses. So back in those days, it wasn't internet. Back in those days, 1-800-CONTACTS was telephone. Almost all the business was telephones. We say to customers, go get your package. You have your package? Yes. They bring it and they read us the prescription. So we said, that's the prescription. No, it's not the prescription because it's not what the doctor signed. You mean to tell me the doctor sold that patient the wrong thing? We know we're looking at the package, what you sold them. You know, we prevailed on that. The Attorney General in California threw his hands up in the air and said to the Optometric Association, you never win that one. And that gave us another idea. We thought, we'll go get these SOBs. That's the way we were thinking of it at the time. We thought, we'll really get them now. Because now we had the state attorney general sympathizing. I wouldn't say he was on our side, but he was sympathizing with what we did. So we had sent to the state attorney general's office massive information documenting that optometrists were not verifying prescriptions. What they would do is they would send a message back and say, not my patient. What do you do with that? It was a lie that they say, not my patient. So we said, you know what? We think that we ought to be able to fill a prescription unless the doctor tells us it's wrong. You get that? It's, flipping it around on them. And we got that passed by the California legislature Took a lot of time and a lot of lobbying and a lot of money and all that. But we got what is called passive verification through the state legislature. Passive verification says if you don't verify it, then the monkey's on your back. Or if you don't say it's not correct, the monkey's on your back. After we succeeded in California, we got a federal law passed. Oh, I love the way people in Washington come up with the names of bills. This one's called the Fairness to Contact Lens Consumers Act. And the Fairness to Contact Lens Consumers Act, which is in effect today, says that if somebody who sells you something with a prescription, eyeglasses or contact lenses, tries to verify it, and if you don't say it's wrong within 24 hours, the seller can presume it's correct. So that was another one of these things where we tried to come up with something, throw it right back at them. Throw it right back at them. Oh, we had some funny ones too. Some of them are not really big deals, but some of them are, look back on as hilarious. When we opened our first store, it was in the Florence Mall in Kentucky, just across the river from Cincinnati. And the Kentucky State Optometric Association, of course, didn't like us at all. They kept throwing all kinds of things at us. They had what's called an optometric practice regulation, administrative code, not a law, but the rules for their people. One of the rules for their people in those days is you're not allowed to put up a sign more than 4 inches high. How do you like that? Can't put up a sign more than 4 inches high. Well, we put up ordinary signs in the mall, right? And they got after us and said, you're violating the regulations and all this and that. The challenge with that was that the optometrists trembled in their boots, right? Because they're licensed by these guys. So we would write to the Optometric Association, say, it has nothing to do with Dr. Sam Jones. It's us. We're doing that. It's not him. He wants a sign 4 inches high. And we told him that we're going to, the heck with it, we're going to put up a bigger one. And what would happen in those cases, inevitably, was they would just back off after a while. They just forget about it. We had another funny one in the Cincinnati area. Of course, you know, Cincinnati is right on the Ohio River with Kentucky on the other side. Ohio had a regulation, an optometric regulation, that says if you advertise optometric services, you have to name the doctor. Kentucky had a regulation, said if you advertise optometric services, no, I got it backwards. Ohio had said if you advertise the services, you cannot name the doctor, which is fine by us, because how do you name them for all these different locations? Kentucky had a regulation that said you have to name them. You have to tell what their name is. Well, we were advertising without naming the doctor. And I got a letter one day, a cease and desist order from the Kentucky State Board that said we're in violation. It was on this beautiful engraved navy blue and gold stationery, you know, that they spent taxpayers' money for, telling us to cease and desist. So instead of getting my lawyer involved, which is going to cost me a couple $1,000s, I got to thinking, and I thought, we advertise on Cincinnati television stations, right? They're all on the Ohio side. I said, we don't advertise in Kentucky. We advertise in Ohio. Never heard from them again. Never heard back from them. Perhaps one other thing happened in Kentucky was the Kentucky State Board filed a lawsuit against us for violating zoning restrictions. Violating zoning instructions, laws. How are we violating zoning? And they said we were manufacturing in a retail zone. I hope you can still hear me because
Yes.
I've got a little thing popped up that says turn off your webcam.
Well, the video is coming out a little wonky, but we can definitely hear you. So you're good. You can go on. And I have a couple of questions, but go on.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, it just feels like you've consistently, every time that you get a challenge or you get challenged, definitely the way you look for the opportunity or look for the gap or a way to see things different. And I was just curious, what drives you to look for that gap in the system or that opportunity to shift things around and see challenges as opportunities versus as barriers?
Well, Ileana, it's pretty simple. It's to save your neck. Think what would have happened to us if Pearl had prevailed and had successfully continued to advertise glasses in about an hour. We wouldn't have had the uniqueness. We had a really, really unique selling proposition. And people didn't know the name LensCrafters in those days. They did know Pearl pretty well. And so we thought, we got to find a way to save our necks. We also had, by the way, along that line, we also had people advertise that you can't make good glasses in about an hour. So this one's not a big one, but it was kind of fun. We had somebody in one jurisdiction advertising it. How can you get good glasses in about an hour? It takes 2 weeks to get good glasses. So we advertised. Did you know the glasses you're currently wearing were made in about an hour? But yours were made in a faraway lab. At LensCrafters, we make them right in the store. And that worked. Consumers actually like that kind of thing. I think it's kind of fun. We had very, very few consumers think we were bad guys. I thought we were heroes, especially on Monday morning. Why on Monday morning? Because they'd gone fishing and dropped their glasses off the side of the boat on the weekend. Monday, we always, during at least the nicer weather times of the year, had people lined up at the door when we opened to get another pair of glasses. The other thing that used to happen to us quite a bit was state boards learned to intimidate the optometrists. And I mentioned earlier that what we did was write the state boards and say, it's not him, it's us. We made him do it. And that usually worked. But California, again, was particularly bad. In California, you can file a lawsuit today and say that I think Ileana Rojas is in violation of a certain statute on the basis of information and belief. Those 3 words, information and belief. You don't need anything else. And you know what happens when you do that? The other side gets the right of discovery. They can come look at all your records. They can come look at all your files. So we had the California Optometric Association constantly looking at doctors' files on the basis of information and belief that they were in violation of something. Of course, they never prevailed. And our biggest challenge, as I said, was to keep the doctors from trembling in their boots. Another one has been, of course, this COVID thing. And I am on the board of directors and really a key player in a European optical retail business that operates in 7 nations. It's below the radar, so you will have never heard of it probably. It's called Supervista AG. And they operate under different names in different countries. For instance, it's Brillen.de in Germany. And of course, we were just flat out of business in April. Everything was shut down. Now, one nice thing about the optical industry is that you have all the details of all your customers, right? You have to. It's medical records. You know their name, you know their address, you know what they bought, you know how much they spent. So you can use that data. And what we did was, we've been open now for 3 weeks again in Germany. And we sent to everybody a message saying we're going to be open on a certain date. We have 600 and some locations in Germany. We're going to be open on a certain date. And as a past customer, you have priority to come into the shop all by yourself. Nobody else will be there. Book an appointment right now, and we're going to mail you PPE, a face mask and so forth. We're going to mail it to you. And our business in Germany is back to 90% within 3 weeks. So we thought, oh, that's pretty good. So then we tried the same thing 2 weeks later in Italy, and another week later, which is only a week ago, in Spain. And those businesses are bouncing back absolutely the same. And everybody else in those markets is moaning and groaning about where the customers are afraid to come out. They don't want to leave their house. So this is another one of those. It's thinking a little bit outside the box, but what is it that your customers are worried about? They're worried about being out and about, and they're worried about who they're going to run into and so forth. And if you make them feel a bit safer, that's going to help a lot. We have about 20 stores in Southern California, and they're not reopened. They haven't reopened yet. We're still waiting to see what's going to happen in the United States. The United States is, as you must know, one of the very last, and the UK, where I am right now. The US and the UK are the last nations to reopen businesses. Anyway, those. Go ahead.
When we were talking last time, you had mentioned a lot about hearing the consumers out and really driving, your decisions and how you operate truly based on consumers' needs and wants, even if they didn't know they had them. So would love your thoughts on that, and especially during this time of change where maybe consumers don't even know what they want.
Well, absolutely. In fact, market research, I guess this fits in the category of market research, is something that very, very few companies, even big companies, know how to do. At Procter & Gamble, I learned something that really, really stuck with me. And what it was is that you need to actually talk to the consumers, not ask them, not send them a questionnaire and get yeses or nos or rate it 1 to 5 and all that sort of thing. Are any of you old enough to remember back when phosphates and detergents got banned on Long Island? Well, I'm old enough to remember that. People were getting soap suds coming out of their tap water, and that didn't go over very well. And they blamed it on phosphates. So the product research people at Procter & Gamble, brilliant engineers and scientists, came up with a whole new formulation for Tide. Tide was taken off the market for several weeks. They came up with a new formulation and said, I was on special assignment reporting directly to John Smale, working on this Long Island problem. And what we discovered was really interesting. We discovered that the thing you had to do was go talk to your customers and go talk to them in person. We actually sent market research people in to watch them do the laundry, if you can believe that. Their beloved Tide, they don't like it anymore. Why? We discovered something that you would never discover with a questionnaire. We discovered that in America, we have these top-loading washing machines, right? In Europe, we have the front-loading ones. And you can't open the door after it gets started, or all the water fall out. So the average American user of a washing machine does not shut the top right away, run around the house and find 1 or 2 other things and throw it in, right?
Yeah.
The original Tide in those days made suds essentially instantly. A new Tide, which was just as effective, didn't make suds at first. It was just as effective, but it didn't make the suds. Therefore, it's no good. So we found out that this, if you use a term in those days, suds profile was important. And we found out suds profile was important by actually interviewing consumers. And I'll tell you something else I've become a huge believer in fact, when I get questionnaires on the internet from the electric company or the gas company or whoever, I always, well, not always, but I usually actually go through those because I think it teaches me how it should be done. I bet many of you get these things and you start through it and you say, well, I didn't ask the right question, because there's no place to tell them that they didn't ask the right question for you as their consumer. So I personally think that it's hugely important to really understand your consumer. And another thing that I become a huge believer in, especially in any kind of retailing, and really especially in optical retailing, is you do whatever you have to do to create enthusiastically satisfied customers all the time. All the time. They don't understand all these things. And by the way, one customer in 5, which is a big number in optics, comes back with a problem. 1 in 5. It's how you handle that really matters. And I'll tell you a quick story there, which has always been one of my favorites. Happened in the Chicago area, Naperville. I used to preach to our staff about create enthusiastically satisfied customers all the time, make decisions in the customer's favor. Unfortunately, in the eyeglass business, the product is so inexpensive and the margins are so high, you can afford to do that. You can afford to remake things. But anyway, some guy had come into the store and the manager calls me on the phone. She's whispering so he wouldn't hear me. She says, I've heard you talk about making decisions in the customer's favor and creating enthusiastically satisfied customers all the time, but I got to ask you about this one. This guy came in here months and months ago, bought a pair of glasses, and he brought his prescription with him. He came back, said he couldn't see out of them. So we had our doctor check his prescription, and it was the prescription he brought us was just way off. So we remade him a pair of glasses to the new prescription, and he was happy. Here we are months later. He comes back in. He says, I've been too busy to get back here. These lousy glasses, blah, blah, blah. She said he had a huge gouge right across the optical center of one lens. He put a big scratch on him somehow. And she says, this guy's trying to rip us off. And what am I supposed to do about that? I thought, well, I got to learn about this one myself. So I said, is the customer there? She says, yes. I said, put him on the phone. So this guy gets on the phone. I said, I'm the president of the company. And I said, the first thing I'm going to say to you is you're going to leave enthusiastically satisfied about LensCrafters. But I got to ask you a question. I said, I understand this happened and that happened and so forth. I never told him about the scratch. Never told him I knew about the scratch. I said, we made you a pair of glasses for free once. And I said, so you tell me, what can we do to make you enthusiastically satisfied? He says, we make you a new pair of glasses for half price. I said, you're on. About an hour and a half later, manager calls me, says, we made this guy his glasses. He came back with his girlfriend about an hour later to get his glasses. He was happy with them. And he bought her 3 expensive pair of glasses. So who won and who lost, right?
That's a great story. And I have several questions here from the audience. So let me start asking. Very inspiring, a lot of things that you've been sharing. I also have to say, how was the process of breaking, these barriers that you've been facing? And do you have a special team in charge of it? Or what's your process?
I don't have a special team because I don't think you can come up with a special team very easily. I did it myself, but we had a guy who's in Cincinnati now, absolutely fabulous lawyer who worked at the Federal Trade Commission. And I hired him out of the Federal Trade Commission, and he was 27 years as the head of what we call regulatory affairs. at LensCrafters. He was my main consultant. And then we hired a woman out of the Attorney General's office in Ohio who was of the same sort of mentality. And I remember when I interviewed her, her name was Kitty Juniper. She's in a big law practice now out in California. But she said to me during the interview, she says, "My name is Kitty." And she says, "That doesn't sound very sophisticated, but you know what I do in the state of Ohio? I prosecute strip mining violations." She was fabulous. We sent her to California when we had problems in California. We couldn't hire optometrists in California without uh, being, like Kaiser Permanente, what is a health maintenance organization. And she
Yeah.
put that together for us, did a fabulous job. But usually I've had people with that kind of experience, Federal Trade Commission and so forth, not just plain lawyers. We had a terrible time with the lawyers at the USU Corporation to whom we'd sold the business because they would read the law and they say, "Oh, you can't do that." Well, if you read the law, you can't do anything in optics. Like a sign 4 inches high. Oh, you can't do that. You can't have a sign more than 4 inches high. And another one is you cannot claim superiority versus virtually every state organization in the United States, optometric organization, has a regulation that you cannot claim superiority. And they will say, "Oh, you're claiming superiority. 1 hour service is claiming superiority." Or things like what in optics is called capping and steering. An optometrist is not allowed to recommend a specific optical shop. And they would say if the optometrist is working in your optical shop, he's recommending your optical shop, and he's violating capping and steering. We also had some really fun things happen with discrimination. We had a woman who was an optometrist for us, and her husband was an optometrist, and he was black. And when she got a job in Virginia, we transferred her to Virginia. But in those days, husband and wives didn't work in the same business for some reason. And he applied to get a license to work in Virginia, and they turned him down. There's a reciprocity provision where if you have a license in one state, you can apply in others. And so we filed a discrimination suit against the state of Virginia. And of course, they had no idea the guy was black. When they found out he was black, they caved in, of course. So anyway, some of that stuff I think back on, it was a real pain in the neck at the time, but I don't think we ever lost any of those things. I don't think we ever did. I can't think of one where we ever lost.
I think it's you've leaned on people that are obviously not only experts in their fields, but also have critical thinking and look at things outside, from a different viewpoint.
Let me tell you one other. Have we got a minute for me to tell you another funny story?
Sure, go ahead.
The guy who founded 1-800-CONTACTS was a character. He was what the kind you're talking about. Thought outside the box all the time, but he would attack if he could. Well, as I said earlier, there are two states that have always been difficult in optics: California and Texas. Texas has a state board made up of 7 optometrists. The only board in the United States, I think, that doesn't have lay people on the board as a majority. It's only optometrists writing the rules for themselves. Well, they got after us at 1-800-CONTACTS for the same old thing of of selling contact lenses without verifying the prescription. So this guy who was the founder of 1-800, he did the funniest darn thing. I cringed at first, but now I look back on it, it was brilliant. You know what he did? He sent an actor who was really good with his 5-year-old son, with the actor's son, and he went to each of the 7 optometric practices of the state board with a hidden camera, goes in there, the same story each time. Oh, I was staying at the Holiday Inn down the street here, and look at my son that he ripped up all my contact lenses. And now I don't have any contact lenses. 6 of the 7 optometrists on the state board sold him contact lenses without verifying the prescription. So we sent that information to the state attorney general. That was the end of their complaint.
Awesome story. How would you summarize in 3 words or just a couple of words, LensCrafters Success?
You know, we had a unique selling proposition that really rang a bell for people. Glasses in about an hour. You don't have to wait 2 weeks. The first advertising we ever did, I've used it all over the world, literally all over the world, and it's always worked. In Russia, Australia, in India. We said, did you just wait for your last pair of glasses? Never again. Now you can have glasses in about an hour. Where? At LensCrafters. Listen to our customers. Then we use testimonials. I like testimonials. And people would say, well, I couldn't hardly believe what they did. I went and got a cup of coffee and came back and my glasses were done and they're fine. So we provided an attractive service that really meant something to a lot of people. Not everybody, of course, but it worked. And we created the largest optical retail business in the world within 4 years. Within 4 years, we were doing $400 million a year. That'd be about $2 billion today. The problem with all that is you didn't have private equity groups back then throwing money at you. You know, it was hard to get money in those days unless you were super profitable and all that. But I think a unique selling proposition is very important, but you have to add one thing to that. You have to add one thing. You have to give the person listening or watching your marketing permission to believe you can pull it off. Permission to believe you can pull it off. And they have to see that instantly. That, yeah, I see how they do it. And we said we put the whole lab right in the store. And then we showed the lab and showed people saying, I did get my glasses in about an hour. And you know, some of you might be old enough to remember that the early LensCrafters, until after I sold it, the early LensCrafters all had the lab in the window. Everybody knows what eyeglasses look like. Why you put eyeglasses in the window? We put the lab in the window to show our unique point of difference. And I used to stand out in front of the stores, and listen to what consumers were saying. They'd gather around, they'd watch in the lab, and the normal comment was something like, wow, look at all those doctors in there. And they were high school graduates in white lab coats. But again, a unique selling proposition that was substantive. It was a substantive, meaningful promise, and we gave permission to believe we could pull it off. And the most important line in our TV advertising in those days, it was all TV, was the very, very last line. Come watch us make your glasses in about an hour. Come watch us make your glasses in about an hour. It worked.
Wow. Yes, definitely that unique selling proposition is important. And then that permission to believe and creating the experience, I imagine, bottom line also has to do with everything. It's not only about the what and the what you want, but and the how, but being involved as part of that experience. Another question. More recent optical disruptor is Warby Parker operating on the inside of price versus LensCrafters speed. What's the best way to capture and act on insights versus the typical way?
Well, Warby Parker has had a huge financial success. Uh, I bet almost all of you think Warby Parker is an online business mostly. Warby Parker is only 13% online. Uh, they've been spun as a tech business by the investment community that's run their valuation through the roof. And but they do provide a decent product at a very attractive price. There's no doubt about that, but they're not a very big business. They're a $300 million a year business. And LensCrafters, with the dollar of 35 years ago, was 400 million within 4 years. Much, much bigger business. But no, the Warby Parker guys have had a nice success, but I don't think they're ever going to be big enough to give LensCrafters, which is now Luxottica, a run for their money. The company that may give the traditional corporate retailers of eyeglasses run for their money is going to be what I'm doing in Germany now with this Brillen.de. We generate leads online and send them to a partner optician to get the glasses, and it's a revenue sharing model. So it's 100% transparent. You're going to buy this, you go there, you've got a coupon that's on your phone, and this is what you're going to get. You're going to save a lot of money, and it's first class product. I think that's, we have 1,300 locations now in Europe, and I think that's going to change the optical retail market over time.
Do you feel that that's going to get, or is being accelerated by, just COVID and the fact that in general things are getting accelerated to what you were saying earlier for a need of survival?
Well, COVID has actually helped this Brillen.de business. There's no doubt about that. Of course, that wasn't the idea, but no, it has helped a lot. But I think the real key is that people realize that there is a huge markup in eyeglasses, and if they can find a way to get away from having to buy from an optometrist who will not give you a prescription without giving you a full health check eye exam for $100 or $140, that they're going to do it. But the United States is one of the very few nations left on earth now where you have to have a full eye health check to get a prescription. You don't have to have a prescription. I'm trying to think. You don't have to have the full eye health check anywhere in the world, or the United States, Canada, South Africa, Australia, the United Kingdom, Ireland, and France. In fact, in continental Europe, you buy contact lenses in the drugstore. You just pick them off the shelf. And guess what? Incidence of corneal abrasions and things has gone down because you have better compliance. People replace their daily lenses when they can buy them cheap. Guess how the Russians sell contact lenses? Vending machines. Vending machines.
Yeah, it goes back to.
I have a friend in Moscow who has 850 vending machines in the Moscow area selling contact lenses. You don't have to have a prescription in Russia. And I won't tell you how much money he's making, but you wouldn't believe it.
Yeah, it goes back to, I imagine, knowing what's the experience, what consumers are looking for at that moment in time.
Well,
go ahead.
Those of you who wear contact lenses, your optometrist probably tries to sell you a year's supply for your 1 year prescription, because he wants to force you to buy them from him or her. That's not what people want. Talk about what do your consumers want. 70% of contact lens wearers are women under 35 years of age, and they don't want to put out $1,200 for a year's supply of contact lenses. If you can buy them in a vending machine, you can buy one box at a time.
It's Thank you. We're running out of time. I would love to continue talking with you. It's always inspiring to hear. We have so many great comments about, how inspiring your conversation has been. Somebody mentioned LensCrafter has definitely learned how to land without one wing more than once, which fully agree. We have just a couple of minutes left before I go to our final announcements. So I'm going to put in one more question in. Do you have any update on the migraine? Oops, sorry, this just moved. Do you have any updates on the migraine therapy glasses that you mentioned in Madrid?
Yes, they're called Neuro Lenses. We have 210 or so locations in the United States and 2 in Germany selling them. They are solving the migraine headache problem for about 54% of people who have migraine headaches when they sit in front of computers, which is actually a big number. They work. And what they do is when you sit in front of a computer, your eyes converge, they turn in. But for many, many people, your eyes turn in to a point that's not comfortable to your trigeminal nerve system, and you get nerve pain, which people call migraine headaches. Migraine headaches are not really a medical term. It's just something's hurting. And these lenses have contoured prism. They move your eyes back out to a more natural position. The problem is they're absolutely custom made and they're therefore expensive. They're made in Japan by a company there, one at a time, but they work. They're absolutely wonderful. And if anybody wants to try them, you can look at neurolenses.com online. And if they don't work for you, if you're one of the 46% or something, we'll refund 100% of your money.
Awesome. Somebody else, we have 1 minute left, but I do want to ask this question. What has been your biggest learning from a failure?
Oh boy, that's a tough one to answer.
In a summary, in a nutshell.
In the business world, I can think of things in the personal world. In the business world, I think the biggest one is something that you've referred to several times, Ileana, and that's not really taking the time to understand what your customer really wants. To the extent that we've had failures in the optical retail business, it's generally because we didn't really understand what the customer wanted, or it's been hiring people in the shops who think they're not supposed to make the customer happy. Try it for a couple of weeks and you'll get used to it, kind of thing, which has been common in optics.
Yeah.
That's not a very good one, I know, but that's the only thing I can think of.
No, but I agree. I think definitely, I mean, we keep talking about the consumer and what they need, and when you don't hear them, you're right. It goes back to really being there, being present, and understand them and talk to them sometimes in person versus just reading between the lines. Thank you, Dean. Thank you so much for this wonderful conversation.
Thank you, I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you for your time. And then for everybody, thank you for making the time this morning. Get involved, sign up for updates at pgalums.com, support our foundation, partner with us. You can also send an email at sponsor@pgalums.com, and you can volunteer, start, join a chapter, or share any other thoughts in our hello@pgalums.com. All of our recordings are available at first of all, in our website, pgalums.com, and then after a month, you'll also see them available at our YouTube channel, so you can also subscribe through there. So if you'd like to hear again from Dean, please feel free. In a couple of days, it should be loaded there. And also all the previous webinars that we've had with wonderful participants. And I invite you to our next webinar. This one's sponsored by Aspirient. It's going to talk about navigating the new normal with an updated economic and market outlook and implications for long-term investment portfolios. Definitely a lot of great information for us. So I invite you to be with us and join us on July 14th at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Dean, and I wish you all to have a great day wherever you are. Thank you.